Julian, and today I'm going to be showing you a bunch of new stuff about how to make hard industrial melodic techno in the style B2, ORGIE, new frames, our label, sort of that style. I'm going to be showing you guys, like I said, a bunch of new techniques. I've learned a bunch of new stuff, and yeah, as usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything from this video is available at the top of the description on my Bandcamp and on my website. Thank you so much for the support, guys, and let's dive in. Alright, so we're at 141 BPM. The first thing going on up here is the kick. Now, it's a pretty standard hard techno kick. We've got the punch of the kick. And then you can see that's just got a bit of EQ on it. And then we have the rumble. And so the way the rumble is being made is kind of like a new take on an old method that you guys have seen before a little bit. So essentially, the way that this is working is we have the main kick, and what's happening is, if you listen to it, you'll notice it's actually happening on the upbeats. So typically when you make a rumble kick this way, you just have your kick going doom, doom, doom on the 1, 2, and 3, and 4, just like how you have the regular kick. But for this, we're putting it on the upbeat, so it's like, and then we put it through this echo here. And then you can hear it essentially just creates this like dun 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 kind of loop. And so this just kind of gives a different flavor to the rumble, It's a nice way to kind of give it a different rhythm and not have it just be the same dun 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 every single time. But now we're kind of getting like this. And then, so what's happening is it's that, but then we're distorting it with this amp here. So obviously you can hear it brings out the rumble a lot. But then on top of that, we've got a low pass. And there you go, that's how you create the rumble. And then it's just going to sit underneath everything. And the track really nicely. And then the last thing on there is just this being sidechained to the main kick. But yeah, so again, just kind of like taking that same old rumble technique, but doing it a little bit differently so we get a more interesting and different rhythm. Then on the group for the kick, you can see, so we just have two effects here. So we have a little bit of drum bass and then this EQ. The drum bass, you'll notice, so it's actually hitting like pretty hard. We've got a little bit of boom, some transient knob turned up, and the driving crunch. Here's without it. And then with it. Now the key here is that without it, it's still mostly the same kick, right? It's just adding that adds that little extra push that just makes the overall kick and rumble, one, sound better, and two, it kind of glues them together, right? Like it just kind of like pushes them closer together. And also having that transient knob turned up makes it punch a lot more. And then the EQ, and this is just cutting at 26 hertz, and all this is for is, a lot of times the rumble can create a lot of low frequencies that we might not even really be hearing, because typically humans can't really hear much, anything lower than 20 hertz, and really we're not hearing much in the range of like 20 to 30 to 35 hertz either. So just cutting there, it cuts out that stuff that we're not hearing, but what's happening is a lot of that stuff can still go and make your mix messier because it's taking away from headroom. There's more information going through into like your mastering stuff at the end, and ultimately it's going to make it a lot less clean if you leave that in. So this is just to cut that out. Simple stuff. Even though it's hard techno, we still want to make it as nice and kind of clean as possible. And yeah, then we have this noise percussion. So what's happening here is, you can see right off the bat, it's playing 16th notes, and then we just have this velocity kind of movement thing that's happening. So you get like it kind of jumps up right on that last one there. And then what's happening is we're using operator here. So what it is it's just a bit of white noise with a short envelope. And then you can see I have this filter with an envelope on that as well. And that's essentially what's creating the click. Here's without it. and then with it. So obviously it goes from like kind of messy to like a nice like kind of punchy percussion. And this is a really great way to make percussion for this style of track, because obviously it's just going to be very like driving. And it sits nicely with the kick there. And then this is just going through a bit of amp where you can see I blended it. So here's without that. And with it. Now this does a lot, so you don't really need to use that much of it. Like just having it at 7% is all we need. And then I just have this like really short echo. Here's without it. And then with it. It just kind of gives you a bit of stereo width. We've got a little bit of drum bus. A high pass filter which cuts out the lows and makes sure this won't get in the way of the kick or anything. And then finally we just have a compressor side chaining this to the kick. Then we have the ride, which is really simple. It's just this nice like 909 ride. One thing I've noticed though is you want to make sure you turn up the release, because if you don't, when you get to the end of the pattern here, check out what happens. So you get that one that's like a little bit quiet, or that ends quickly. Like that. So you just turn up the release and now you get to the end there. And it's the same. And also just high passing it so that it doesn't have any messy low end. Then we have the main hi-hat. So this is just a bit of layering. We have this one. Kind of a more standard like 909 style hi-hat. And then this one, which is just like a nice punchy closed 909 hi-hat. And then we have a little bit of reverb on that as well. And so this is kind of a technique. Like, so the layering here is essentially because this one has the shh, but it doesn't really have the like to it, like the punch. And then this one is all punch, but it doesn't have the shh. But then what I've noticed is that if you want to put some reverb on these, don't just like put reverb on the whole thing. Like in theory, we could just make a group and just put this reverb on there. But actually, what you want to do instead is put reverb just on the, like just on the punchy hi-hat. And then this one, just keep it dry. And that just tends to sound better. Like if I do it the other way, see, it's a bit messier. And yeah, then the last thing from the drums is this little rave loop here, which sounds like this. So this is another one of those like classic 90s, early 2000s style techno, trance loops, whatever you want to call it, hands up, all that kind of stuff. Essentially what we're doing here is we're kind of like chopping it. So I'll show you where we have this. Here's like the whole drum section without it. And then with it. So it just adds a lot of really nice movement there to the drums and really brings them to life. So I like having stuff like this. And that's just going through a bit of echo. You'll notice that I actually don't have any automation on that. That was something. We got it being sidechained to the kick, and then just a high pass filter, and then that's it for that one. And then we have the bass. So the thing about a track like this is typically you're gonna have your bass, like the actual like bass, which is gonna be the rumble, right? Like that's actually creating like low end and movement and all that kind of stuff. But then usually you're also gonna have something on top of that which is playing more of like the chord progression, and that's where this comes in. But then you notice that when I solo these, like when we play the two basses side by side, they don't clash at all. And so that's how you want to work it. It's just making sure that like these are always going to fit together. And there's a few techniques to do that. So the first thing here is just the notes that I'll show you. So you can see this is playing like this, honestly, pretty simple minor chord progression, right? Where we're going, we're in the key of G minor. So we're going root note, sixth, minor third, fourth. So like not actually that crazy, but it just has a very big, epic kind of feel. Especially once you combine it with the other melodic stuff. So just kind of like, you know, a lot of times it's pretty simple notes within those minor scales, but just like kind of working with them in a more interesting way and kind of like getting creative with it. Like it's not like there's some magical sauce that you just don't know to write these kinds of notes. It's just like going back and forth over and over and listening to it on loop and like trying so many different combinations of different musical voices until ultimately you reach very simple ones that you just wouldn't have thought of before. And for the sound on this one, it's made with wavetable. So this is just 2 saw waves. Now this is another technique that can make this kind of work a little bit better with the rumble. As you'll notice, the second one is an octave up from the first one. And if I put those in the same octave, you'll notice it's a bit more muddy when we play it with the rumble now. So it's kind of just a way to make things a bit cleaner. And it also makes the bass fatter. And I also have a little bit of sub on there. You can see we have this low pass filter which just automates up in the beginning here during the break. And then I just have some classic unison. I have this EQ here, which is probably the biggest thing to make this fit with the rumble, right? Like if I turn that off, you don't really hear the difference at all. But then when we turn it on, there you go, they fit together. And then the last thing that really makes this fit with the kick is just sidechaining it. Like, you're probably going to need to sidechain this for this style of techno in order for all this stuff to work at once. Then we have this pad. So what's happening here, if I show you the MIDI of both of these at the same time, is you'll notice that this pad, so this is the bass MIDI, and then this is the pad MIDI. And you'll notice that they change chords at the same time, right? Like, when this one goes, this one goes. And it's kind of like happening in a similar way, but they're not playing the same note. So essentially what we're doing here is we're creating chords across 2 different instruments. And if I put these down a few octaves, you can kind of see more clearly how these fit together. Like, yeah, you can see, like, you know, this, for example, is a major chord there. But then because it's being played this way, yeah, you don't always notice that. But yeah, so the way I recommend writing this is you're going to write the bass line and kind of write out that MIDI, and then you can go and write this on top of that. Like, I would even do it in the same MIDI file and just get them sounding really solid together like that. And then you go and make the synth patch. This is one of those sounds that I think a lot of people would probably want to think about the synth sound first and, oh, like, how do we make that perfect, cool, unison, all that kind of stuff. As much as you do want to focus on that, I implore you to focus on really good notes first, because really, like, that's going to make the difference, I think, with a sound like this. It's not like the sound is important and it does need to be a cool sound, but this is going to sound good regardless of, you know, how you make it sound with the synth. You know, this is just going to sound good because it's solid musically. Now for the sound, this one is made with wavetable as well, so wavetable is really good for this style of techno. We've got a saw wave and a square wave here, and you can see the saw wave is an octave up, and then I have a low pass filter as well, which is just automating in here. And then you can see, yeah, we got the amp envelope like that, and then I have this noise unison, and that's all the way up, so we're just getting that like super heavy, washed out, chorusy sound. And then it's going to a bit of reverb, which has some automation here, just to make it disappear right at the end of the break. And then you also get that kind of ringing out there too, because like if we get rid of the reverb, you can see it doesn't transition as well. See, it's just not as smooth as when you have that all ringing out. And then we have this compressor here, which just sidechains it to the kick. And then this also has some automation, just because here, I didn't want it to stay sidechained, because if we do that, you'll notice it kind of gets lost in there. But if you have the sidechain turn off, now you get this big, like, over top of everything. So, yeah, and then we just have a high pass filter, you know, cutting out the low end, making sure it's not going to mess up the bass or anything like that. And then we have the lead. Now this lead is also all pretty much like very straightforward stuff in the G minor scale. You'll notice that it's mostly based around our root note, our 5th, and then our 6th here. So like pretty simple stuff, and then we just bring in the 4th, And then over here, there's one minor third. But yeah, so it's really just about like picking 2 or 3 voices there that you're going to keep hammering on. Like again, like we're going for the root note, 5th, and 6th. And then you can bring in these extra notes here and there when you want to kind of create a new feel in a certain part, if that makes any sense. Like here, for example. So we want to just plug along with these same notes through here, and then we bring in this 4th here to kind of like transition that. Right, and then we get to the G, and then it goes right back to the start there for bar 3 there. So it's kind of like thinking about it like that. Like pick a few notes that you're going to repeat over and over, and then use maybe 1 or 2 different extra notes when you want to essentially make like a transitional part into the next bar. Now for the sound on this one, this is also made with wavetable, so it's a saw wave, and then another saw wave, and I even have the sub oscillator on this one as well. And then that's going into a low pass filter, which has an envelope on it. So that's just that amp envelope. But then we're also automating it. So it's a very dynamic filter, but just having that constant movement. Just ensures that it's going to sound different everywhere where you hear it in the track. And then that's also got the noise unison that I showed you on that pad. But with this one, it's a lot less heavy, right? We just have the voices on too. And then I have a bit of echo. I have this reverb, which automates to be like really heavy here. So that's just the dry wet being automated. And then once we get here, you hear the actual lead. Kind of a nice way to transition that there. And then we just have this drum bus, just making it a bit fatter. A high pass filter cutting out the lows. And then finally just a compressor side chaining into the kick. And yeah, I'll talk a little bit more on that reverb, because obviously like, if we were just going to have this in here, without it, like, it would be kind of boring, like, because then by the time you get here, you already heard it. This way, it kind of turns this into like a cool, like, unique part, where it's all washed. And then here, and we can just let that work really well in the drop. So yeah, it's just kind of a matter of keeping the arrangement exciting. Then we just have this Rave loop. This is actually the same one that I showed you up there, but it's just going here, just all the way through, just constantly repeating. And then I have a low pass filter on that just to transition it. And you'll notice it kind of disappears toward the end. To kind of like level that out there. And then we have these little vocal stabs. And these are actually made with the same sample. Yeah, you can see it's the same sample. It's just 2 different spots on the sample that I found inside of Simpler. And then we're processing them a little bit differently. You can see they have a little bit of different distortion on them. But yeah, these are almost like a part of the percussion, right? Like, if I play it with all the drums, you can really hear how this just... We have like this whole solid groove happening. Like that could be maybe your intro or something. But these are going to be very important for the drums as well as the melodic stuff, because then they're also kind of fitting in with that. And the only other thing down here is just this clap and this little noise build. Just transitioning that part, so it's just like a little clap, with some notes put in there for transition. You can see I played with the velocities on a lot of those. And then this noise build is just a simple white noise with a little bandpass filter on it, just sweeping up. And yeah, just little stuff. Obviously we don't want to have like a big riser or anything like that. But these, or even like a do-do-do-do-do-do-do, like that kind of snare build. But just having like this. I mean, if we turn it off, you can see like something's kind of missing here. Compared to when we have these. So yeah, those are just there for some transition. And yeah, so that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, literally everything that you've seen me work with in the video here. It's available right at the top of the description for just $5. It's also available on my Patreon if you're a patron there. Thank you so much to everybody who goes and grabs the samples, though. Like I said, not that expensive. Every sale really helps support me though. I don't make a whole lot just off of YouTube, but with these sample packs and different stuff like this, I'm able to keep going and keep bringing you guys new tutorials like this every single day and showing you some stuff that I don't think is out anywhere else on the internet. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with another video.